My Storm of the Stratagems KVK ended probably around a week ago now, and just now I can say the fighting has pretty much officially ended. No one is really fighting anymore, and so today I'll be giving you a recap of my KVK. I'll discuss how it went down, which kingdoms were really good, which camps were really strong. I will also tell you my personal performance in this KVK. How many kill points did I get? Do I think it was a good performance? How do I think the KVK was? I'll also tell you what do I think about the Storm of the Stratagems format itself. Do I think that Storm of the Stratagems KVK is actually fun? Is the format itself cool? Are the stratagems cool? Are they nice and free-to-play friendly? Or is it a thing I would not do again? Would I not recommend doing Storm of the Stratagems? And then finally, I'll discuss something that's going to be happening with my account over probably around the next week or two. That will be quite interesting for you guys who want to know more about the future of the channel. So if you want to know the future of the channel, or you just want to know more about the Storm of the Stratagems format and how I enjoyed it, or if I enjoyed it at all, you want to stick around until the end of the video. Let's begin today's video with a quick recap of the KVK, and we'll just start off really blunt. Who won the KVK? And you can see I'm not sitting in Kingsland, so our camp, which was Wind Camp, and also our allies, which were Earth Camp and Daybreak Camp, we did not win. It probably was not even close, actually. I said in my predictions, I thought we were going to win. I can take that as a complete L. We did not win. It was not even close. So us in Wind Camp and then Daybreak Camp and Earth Camp, we fought for what that's worth, but we definitely did not win. And that means the enemies, Fire Camp, Greenwood Camp, and Water Camp definitely won the KVK. Out of all the camps, to be honest, I think that Fire Camp was the most formidable, especially 1256. Their kingdom was absolutely insane. They had mad field presence. They had pretty much rallies going 24/7. I don't really think they had a downtime, and they held back Daybreak Camp really well, and they went quite well with their allies in 2814. So 1256, 2814, Fire Camp in general, really strong. They did really well this KVK. I don't think we really fought them too much. There was a little bit of fighting in Kingsland. When I was fighting in Kingsland, I fought a couple people from Fire Camp, but mainly they were fighting Daybreak Camp and also a little bit of Earth Camp. But we mainly fought Water Camp, and Water Camp was also really strong, considering our kingdom was meant to be the most powerful, considering power-wise, not kill points, but power-wise. They completely held us back a lot. Our camp was probably the strongest in terms of power, and really, Water Camp just held us. Even at past 7s, I've got a marker for the past 7 that we fought at. This past play went on for like 2 weeks. I think it was this one or the one next to it. Either one of these. I think it was this past 7 right here. We fought for probably like a week straight at this past. Since it opened, we just kept fighting and fighting. We never really burnt their fort. They burnt our fort at one point. Like, they were doing way better than us, and this was the past 7. Like, you think that at this point, our camp should be completely dominating them. We had way more power, and you can see at the end, we definitely don't have the past 7 anymore, and they definitely fought really well here. Like, they pretty much controlled the past the majority of the time. We did take it sometimes, but they pretty much held on to it the whole entire time. So, Water Camp, really formidable opponents as well. They did really well, considering we were supposed to be much higher power, so you think we would do much better. We did win most Ancient Ruins fights, though, from what I can remember, especially towards the start. We won most of those battles, but also there were some times where Water actually did win those fights, though I think one of them may have ended in a draw at one point. Though the Ancient Ruins weren't too bad. It was really pretty equal there. But then again, you would think that our kingdom would do better since we probably had like 3 times the active members. So overall, our performance probably wasn't that amazing, but Water Camp definitely did really good. I don't really know much about the Greenwood or Nature Camp. I guess I should call it Nature Camp. I don't really know much about their performance. I didn't really pay too much attention to their KVK. I think we fought them a little bit, quite a bit actually, but I can't remember too much how they went. So I can't really attest if they did good or bad. I'm not 100% sure, and someone who's in the KVK could let me know in the comments how their side went. In terms of how the KVK unfolded from my side, like for our camp in general, just Wind Camp, really for the first basically start of the KVK, we had full control of 1 past 5, which was right here, since these were our allies up here, so we didn't actually have to do any fighting. For the first part of the KVK, there was no fighting at all. We had control over this zone, and we had control over this zone with our allies, so nobody was fighting. For the first like 2 weeks of the KVK, there was no fighting for us at all. We just got to pretty much farm, stash resources, and get crystal tech, which was nice, but it was pretty boring. And then after that, the real fighting kicked in when past 7 opened, and that's when we went and we fought Water Camp. So our camp fought Water Camp. We went into battle pretty much, and we actually did win this zone initially. We did take over the zone, but it took a lot of fighting and a lot of just pretty much back and forth, where it would be our off time and then they would push us because we had no one on the field, but then our up time would come and we'd get a few rallies and garrisons on, and then we'd be able to push them back. And that was pretty much how that ran. It was just a very big back and forth trying to win this past 7, and eventually we did win the zone, but you can see obviously they've come back now and reclaimed it. There was one point where they did push out again, they got a bit of ground, but then we did push them back out again, so it was a fairly close fight in this zone. Once again, you think we would do better considering we had way more power, but it was a fairly close fight. We did end up winning the zone, and that means we had control over the zone. We had the ruins and all that, the dark altar, sorry. So that was actually a pretty fun fight. That probably lasted like 3 days. I reckon I fought 2 of the 3 days in it. So that was a fun fight, but really it didn't last too long, and there wasn't too much fighting since, like I said, it was just back and forth. Like right here, there was a lot of fighting up towards here where we would like burn one flag. We'd burn like this flag, and then they would come back and burn our flag, and then we would just rebuild it and just keep doing that until eventually we obviously had more numbers and more troops and more power. So eventually we did tire them out. But you can see they've come back with a vengeance. So we technically won this zone, but in the end, we didn't win the KVK, so it doesn't matter as much. But that's really how that unfolded. On the Fire side, I know Fire completely dominated Daybreak Camp, and they won this zone. So I think that Daybreak Camp did fight pretty well from what I saw. Just Fire was just way too strong. So Daybreak Camp did not get their zone. I don't remember exactly which zone 7 it was, but it was one of them, and they did not win that zone. So they did get to Kingsland eventually, I think, but Fire Camp did win the zone 7, and by quite a large margin. You can see there pretty much isn't even any dead territory there. It might have been this zone actually right here where they fought. So Daybreak Camp fought pretty well, but Fire Camp definitely fought quite a bit better. After that, though, we moved into the Kingsland fight, and the Kingsland fight really, really underwhelming. If you were on my live stream, you would have seen that for my whole entire campsite and our ally campsite, it was me, 2 other people, and maybe 4 other people in the whole entire Kingsland. 8 hours after it started, we completely lost. Like, it was just game over. We had no rallies or garrisons. I was the only person that had like a max rally commander, and I can't rally flags. So at that point, the only person on the front line with a max rally commander was my Henry, and I'm definitely not a good rally player. And there was no one filling flags. It just was not going to plan, and they just called off the Kingsland. And that's pretty much how Kingsland went. It was like an 8-hour fight. I fought for like 4 hours of it after me. It was like a 12-hour total fight. I streamed part of Kingsland, but really, it was just me city popping and fighting people who were trolling in Fire Camp. That was the whole entire Kingsland battle. So Kingsland, really, really boring battle. I would have wanted more. I personally saved most of my stuff to go in for Kingsland. And then I wake up, because this KVK was like 1 a.m. my time. I woke up at like 8 o'clock, and the Kingsland was just over by that time. There was the surrender marker, just go back to the zone. They're going to retreat and make another plan. Yeah, Kingsland was just well over. We definitely lost Kingsland by like an absolute landslide. It just was not even close. So Kingsland, absolute disaster. But the other zones were fairly decent. It was fairly decent performance on both sides. But once again, you would have expected our kingdom especially to be able to pretty much dominate the whole of Water Camp, since our power was like triple their camp's power. So yeah, it was still underwhelming on our kingdom side, but overall, it was kind of okay fighting in this zone over here, but after that, Kingsland was just completely abysmal. So how was my personal performance for this KVK? And I'll just say it right off the bat, it wasn't really that good. I said in my prediction, I wanted to get like 300 million kill points. I got like 154. Really, really bad amount of kill points in my opinion. And then in terms of dead troops, I only took like 750,000. I was running out of troops actually. I should have trained more mixture of troops. I think the mistake for this KVK for me, I trained way too many T5, which I didn't really use that much. Like the T5 were too expensive. I don't really grind gold. I just kept training them. So I had too many T5, which I could have allocated the resources into training more T4 infantry, calves, archers. And that would have definitely been much better for my account. And I would have been able to kill more troops. So I would have probably been able to reach the 1 million goal if we fought pretty well in Kingsland. I would have been down to kill the rest of my calves and infantry. But after some point, I only had 1 march to put in garrisons and flags, so by the time I joined them, that 1 march would only be able to give me so many deads at a time, and there weren't enough flags and rallies going for me to even be able to kill 1 million troops if I wanted to at some point. So after our past 7 had finished, or past 8, sorry, the Kingsland battle didn't even give us enough time to kill 1 million troops. I didn't even get the time to kill 1 million if I really wanted to, since really the whole KVK was just back and forth. The other issue for me in terms of field fighting, as you know, I didn't get many kill points. I had the resources too, to be honest, besides when I got pretty much zeroed and people stole my resources, but that was like after all the fighting had ended. I had the resources, and I still probably do have the resources to get another 150 million kill points. I even have the speed ups for it. The KVK was just at a really bad time for me. 1:50 a.m. was when most of the things opened, and like I said, it was all back and forth, so what happened was we would fight, and then I'd get on, and then it'd be over. Just fighting's over, and then there'd be like 2 enemies online, we'd burn them, and then we'd all go offline, and they'd burn us, and it'd be me versus like a burnable of like 80 people, and that's just not going to work. And then they would go offline, and everyone else would come, and we'd burn them back, and it wasn't really that much field fighting. I think I only busted out my full 3-match murderable maybe a handful of times. A few of them were on the live stream in Kingsland, and after that, I didn't really use my 3-match murderable. Most of the KVK was just city popping and sitting in a ball with the other allies in my kingdom while we just burnt the enemies, free burning them because it was their downtime, our uptime, and that just kept rotating. So The fighting, kind of lackluster. I got most of my kills city popping, ruins fighting, and a little bit in Kingsland, and then also a little bit trolling in the enemy zone. So really, that's where most of my kills came from. So my kill points really just were not that good, and I definitely would have wanted them to be better if I was at a better time for me, and if we got a lot more field fighting going and they lasted longer, I probably could have reached my 300 million goal. But this KVK, I definitely didn't reach it, and I'm hoping next KVK I can definitely do a little bit better. In terms of commanders, though, I think my best performing March has to go to Henry Zulang. Like, it was an absolute beast March. Occasionally, I'd switch it to Zuj YSG, occasionally Boudica YSG, just for a change of scenery. My worst performing March probably goes to the Nebu YSG, to be honest. It definitely was the most squishy and the most undesirable to run. From this point on, I think that if the next commanders for archers come out, the commanders I'm probably going to drop, it's probably going to be Nebu. I think he's the commander that's going to be dropped from my meta ball and replaced with some new legendary commander. That's my hope, because Nebu YSG, it works if it doesn't get targeted, but if I even get looked at, that March is just gone. So I'm really not a big fan of it at the moment. I think that Nebu definitely is lacking in that combination. YSG is still doing YSG things. He's got the AoE and he's got the skill damage, so I think YSG is a more valuable part of my meta build than Nebu, but then again, they just were both really, really squishy, so I had to even at one point run them with the Call of the Loyal, literally just so they could get away from more battles. So at one point, I was literally running them with Call of the Loyal just to run away. So really, they weren't a very good March, and I'm probably looking to replace my Nebu in the future with a newer Archer commander. But definitely, MVP goes to Henry with Zulang, and Boudica Cyrus did fairly decent, and in the ruins, Boudica YSG did really, really good. So I think that all my commanders did decently, but Nebu definitely was probably the least powerful of all of them. But granted, he is only like 5512. He's not even expertise. The rest of the commanders are expertise, so they definitely have an advantage over my Nebu, but really, Nebu was definitely performing the worst out of all my commanders and was probably targeted the most, because you see a Nebu, you're just going to hit it, it's going to melt, so it's basically free kills, and a lot of people, when they saw the Nebu, pretty much gun for him, or when people saw Henry, they gun for him sometimes, but after some point in time, people realize they're hitting the Henry, they're just getting it's like a decent trade if I get fully swarmed, so it's like they're getting an okay trade, but really it's almost even, but if they hit my Nebu, I get like 200,000 kill points and they get like 800,000. So Nebuchadnezzar with YSG, definitely my worst performing. Henry with Zulang, though, definitely my best performing, because Henry really, really tanky, and there was a lot of getting swarmed this KVK. We didn't have as much field presence as I would have wanted. And then Zulang just doing Zulang stuff. So a very, very anti-swarm commander with a very good AoE commander worked really well in those situations where if I get caught out, I'm just going to get swarmed down. So Henry Zulang, definitely MVP. And then oddly enough, if I wanted really, really anti-swarm, I went Henry Cyrus, and it was just insane, because all Cyrus was doing was just dealing instant damage and instant AoE to the opponents. And then Henry's also got his own instant damage. So that March actually worked oddly well for when I was like trying to not get War Frenzy. I just put it in front of my city. Someone would swarm it with 5 marchers. They'd take a bunch of skill damage, and then I'd run away. So that March worked very, very good, but that was more of a niche March. So Henry really was probably the MVP commander of this KVK. Boudica did decent, obviously. She's pretty much just like another version of Henry. I think that they're probably almost sitting at equal kills now. No, definitely not, but Henry definitely still was my MVP. In terms of my actual kills, in terms of like the real kill number, I think it's somewhere in the realm of 11 million, but to be honest, that stat's definitely inflated, because when I was trolling inside of the water zone after we lost Kingsland, I was getting a lot of T1 kills because I was just hitting their farmers non-stop. So the water zone definitely buffed up my kills. It was probably like maybe 8 million, 9 million before, and then I probably got around another 500,000-600,000 T4, T5. Other than that, though, they were mostly T1. So definitely a bit of an inflated number here with a bunch of T1 troops and T2 and like T3, which I don't really care about, but they are going to reflect on my kills. So it does make it look like a little bit more than I got, but really it's only maybe 1 million, 1.5 million extra kills. It's not too bad. So now that we know exactly how I perform this KVK, even though it was pretty lackluster, what do I think of the Storm of the Stratagems KVK? I've had a whole KVK to experience it. How do I feel about it? And to be honest, I really love the format. I enjoyed pretty much every part of it. There's a lot of stuff here that allow you to fight more, like reducing the amount of resources that you have to use. Triage is really, really interesting, where you take literally less sevs. I've prevented 510,000 sev wins, which is just insane. Then you've got stuff like Warfare, you've got stuff like Surprise Strike. All of these things are just literally free buffs, which I don't mind. I think at one point I was running the March speed one as well. It's just free buffs and stuff, and if you know how to use it correctly, you're going to get a head start and an advantage over other players. So if you just know how to manipulate these things correctly and use them in a good way, they're really, really strong, and it's literally free-to-play value. So I'm definitely a fan of the Stratagems KVK. They're not very complicated. It's really, really simple, and there's something for everyone, whether it be the artifact, if you really, really like the artifact stuff, whether it be going to try and macro how much you're taking saves and how much resources you're spending, or just trying to get your damage to go absolutely ridiculous, or even trying to get your stuff such as your rallies to go absolutely insane, there was really something for everybody in this KVK. I also actually got to experience counter rallying quite a bit with my Henry at one night. There was like one night where we were kind of fighting back and forth, and I was online and they were like, just counter rally with Henry. I was like, yeah, sure. And it was really, really fun. The counter rallies leaving instantly was actually really, really cool, because often counter rallies are useless. Like, you set one, by the time it goes, you've probably swarmed down the rally, or the rally's been killed by the flag, or you've swarmed out all the reinforcements and the rally's just dying. So being able to instantly fill a counter rally and instantly send it was much better than having to wait the like 3-4 minutes for it to actually get there. So rallying with Henry was actually viable. I was able to counter rally a lot of players at one point, and it was definitely very fun. I enjoyed counter rallying, and I would probably do it again. If I was in the Storm of the Stratagems KVK and I got the offer to do some counter rallies, I'd be very much down to do them, because they are definitely much more interesting in this KVK than they are in other KVKs where you have to wait 3 minutes. It's only really good if they're doing stuff like a pass rally or a fort rally that's going to last a while. So I did enjoy counter rallying, and I definitely say that's probably my favorite part of the KVK. That small change, making counter rallies basically instant, was really, really cool, and I definitely say that was the most enjoyable change out of everything in the KVK. Obviously, stratagems were fun, they weren't very complicated, they were very simple, easy to understand, and then the counter rallies were definitely pretty cool. One thing I'm not a big fan of though was probably the Alliance arrow towers, but the reason is because I kept getting hit by them since I kept teleporting into them, though they do provide some really unique strategy, because at one point, let's say in water zone over here, when I teleported in to mess around with them, we had a fort, and the fort was pretty much just wedged between two of their flags. I can probably try and find it, and it came to a point where that fort was pretty much just getting destroyed, being burnt out, and players were just teleporting in. I think it was literally right here. Players were just teleporting in, and what was happening is they had an Alliance arrow tower. It's not here, but they had an Alliance arrow tower pretty much just squeezing in both sides of the fort, so most of the teleport spaces were restricted. It was a really, really smart move, and it definitely showed the arrow towers had a lot of strategy, because you can use them in certain places and restrict city movement. So they were definitely a cool thing. They were definitely a cool concept. They definitely made the game more strategic. I just didn't enjoy them because I had to keep thinking, can I teleport here or can I not? And it was a bit finicky. Whenever you'd click on the Alliance arrow towers and zoom out, it wouldn't show the whole area that they're getting. So I wasn't a major fan of them, but they definitely added more strategy, and that was definitely a unique part of the KVK. I think to build an Alliance tower as well, it wasn't too difficult really. You just go to the remodel and you can just do it from here. And the 5 chances was fairly adequate, to be honest. You didn't have to spend too many resources, and if you used them properly, those 5 chances would be pretty much more than enough. So it wasn't too spammy where you're just spamming down a bunch of arrow towers, and it wasn't like underused where it's like no one's ever going to use it. It was in a fairly good situation, a fairly good position. I just didn't really like it because I had to pay a lot more attention where I was teleporting. But strategically wise, that was definitely a very nice staple of the KVK. So overall, I think that Storm of the Stratagems is probably my favorite KVK format. It's really fast paced on the open field. There's a ton of extra stats and buffs you can get, and then all of the stratagems actually allow you to save literally hundreds of thousands of 7-wins, as you saw right there. So really, I did enjoy this KVK. The format was really fun. The people we're up against were really fun. I wish it wasn't at 1 AM my time, but really I can't control that. That's definitely not the KVK's fault. And I also think the counter rallies were definitely a big fun part of it. So I definitely would give this KVK probably like a 9 or an 8 out of 10. Literally just the format itself, not taking into account how the KVK went. The format itself is like a 9, 8 out of 10, which I really, really like. It was such a fun KVK format, and it was very balanced, and I definitely would recommend doing it. For a kingdom that's considering signing up, I think you would really enjoy it. It's not overcomplicated, it's really easy to understand, and it's a really, really fun format. So if you're thinking about doing Storm of the Stratagems, I highly recommend it. As someone who's done it, I think it was probably the most fun KVK format I've done. Even though our fighting was fairly lackluster, I enjoyed every little bit of it that we did get. So at the start of the video, I mentioned something that's going to be happening with my account over the next couple of days. And by couple, I mean probably 8 to 12 days. And that is, I will actually be migrating to another kingdom. I'll be going to a new kingdom that I've never ever been to, and I've only ever been in 2365 since the start of this channel, so I just really want to give a big shout out to this kingdom. They are the people who got this channel off the ground. The only reason you're probably seeing this video right now is because when I first started YouTube, the people from 2365 watched my videos, so for that, I'm just going to mention it now, and I'll mention it in my migration video. I am forever thankful. So I will always have a massive amount of gratitude towards 2365, but I will still be migrating because I need better KVKs for the live streams. I need a KVK that's going to last like 2 days straight fighting. So hopefully this kingdom is going to bring it to me. Plus, they gave me an absolutely nutty offer. So once I migrate to that kingdom, you guys will get a video about it. I'll be making a full video detailing the reasons why I migrated, what I hope for it to achieve, but I thought I would mention it in today's video as well since it is fairly relevant. I will be migrating probably within the next 8 or so days. So now that we've reached the end of the video, I would always say something like subscribe or some rubbish like that, but really today that is rubbish, because what I would like to say instead is a thank you to 2365. A thank you for getting this channel off the ground, watching my first garbage videos that were really bad quality. Either you couldn't even hear my microphone, or there were massive black borders around the video and I was talking into a cheap headset. But because of you guys, I'm literally doing this as my current job. This is paying me the same I would get if I worked a casual job. So I'm always going to be forever grateful for the people in 2365. You've pretty much revived my love for Rise of Kingdoms. When I migrated here, I probably expected to get 1 KVK out of the game before I went really casual and maybe even quit. But because you guys watched my YouTube channel, you gave me the motivation to keep playing Rise of Kingdoms, and I've formed some relationships here which I'll probably never forget, whether it be strengthening relationships with people I already knew, or even making new relationships with people I would have never expected to become friends with. That are just absolutely amazing. And there are so many conversations I've had in this kingdom with so many people, and there's even conversations out there which could get me cancelled, but you guys didn't cancel me, so big thank you for that. So at the end of this video, I just want to say a big thank you to 2365 especially for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.